Okay, so the first thing we're going to start today is actually how do you get OpenClaw set up? What's the fastest way to do it, a safe way to do it, and a way that you can explore before you let this run wild on your computer. So I'm going to show you how I set it up for my students. You can try it as well. It takes about 15 minutes and you can be up and running for less than $20 and a lot less than buying a Mac Mini in that space. So we're going to install the OpenClaw platform. One of the interesting things about this is it seems to get updated almost daily. There's a huge team of people working on building this out. So trying to figure out how do I stay up to date on this can be difficult. One way that I've done is just kind of monitoring the X account for OpenClaw just to see what are the new updates that are coming out, but also making sure that I have a stable backup and a stable protection of if I want to try this or spin this up again, how can I do that? So in OpenClaw, you can actually go down to the docs at the very bottom. So if you go to their documentation here, you can actually get some of their information that's there. And so one of the things they actually have are what are the different platforms that I can use. So you can run this on just about anything at this point for some of those. But you can also kind of deploy this a few different ways as you're kind of getting set up in this space. Different tools that are out there. The docs are getting updated quite a bit. So I highly recommend that you take some time to read through the documentation and see what's out there. Now, one of the things I'm going to use is Railway for actually setting this up. So I like to use Railway as a quick way to deploy for my students. I can visually see it as I'm kind of working on it in this space as we're kind of playing around to kind of get this set up. And one of the great things about Railway is they actually have an official kind of one-click install for Railway. The only thing that you have to do to get this up and running is to define a password. So one of the things that they actually do in this space is they actually kind of host this OpenClaw behind a proxy so that the only way to access it is through a specific address with a specific port with a specific password. This port is different than the default port that OpenClaw uses, which is if you spin it up on your own and you don't have your system protected from ports and the firewall set up right, you can instantly be attacked by bots that are out there on the internet. So this is a great way to kind of hide that port. It goes through the standard web hosting port and gives you a little bit more protection kind of in that space as you're working on it. So inside of this, they've kind of set up one of these systems that really has a Docker container that has the information that you need for the system. And then they have a storage volume that actually stores your data persistently in that, which is great so that if you break your OpenClaw and you need to reinstall OpenClaw, you don't lose all of your data, your memory, your history, all the things that you've been building out in that space. They also have a really great way to do backups daily, which I highly recommend. I have broken my OpenClaw multiple times by telling it to try something. And the way this one is set up is it has full admin rights to do everything. Now, they do have some things sandboxed for some security settings. You can read about that in the documentation. But you want to be very careful because it does have full access on the system that it's on. I do not recommend installing this on your own computer the first time you're running through this process. So we're going to do this using Railway in this space. Now, you can actually just click on the deploy now, which we'll do here in just a second, but all of this is also hosted out on GitHub, so you can actually customize this. The version that is out there right now is pinned to a very specific version of OpenClaw from earlier this month. I wanted to try out some of the new features that were added on the 23rd. So all I had to do was go in here and I was able to actually fork this repo, open up in Claude or Codex or one of your other tools that are out there and tell it to update the pinned version to the most recent version. Did that in about 30 seconds, and then I was able to deploy my version of this script as well, which I will eventually share after I make a few more tweaks to add a few more security precautions in there in the space as well. So the way that we're going to actually set this up is we're going to go to Railway. So this is railway.com. This is a great kind of resource. If you go look at the pricing for this, you can actually do this for free to kind of start with. And so you get access to 30 days free. You get 5 credits per month. This is an on-demand system, so you're only kind of paying for what's used. And then you can get away with just the $5 a month hobby plan. So I highly recommend the $5 a month hobby plan. To host all of my student groups, I'm running purely off of the pro plan, which is $20 a month. And then you go over that kind of usage, they're going to charge your credit card. I've found that my highly kind of advanced students are using about $30 to $40 a month in usage on their OpenClaw at the moment, which seems fairly reasonable for the amount of work that they're actually getting done. In addition to that, we are giving them their own AI model. So I have actually set up mini Max for them, which I'll show you here in just a second as well. But to kind of get started, all you have to do is click on deploy now, and it's going to open up. It's going to ask you where you want to actually deploy this. So I'm going to put this in a new project and not one of my existing ones that's there. You're going to configure that system. So if I go to configure and then I scroll down, the only thing that we really need to set up is a password kind of in this space. If that's what you're wanting to do. Another thing that I recommend that you kind of set up is the Claude Gateway token. So the gateway token is how we're going to log into Claude, and it is separate from our password. So use a password that you can easily remember, something that you can kind of store. And for your gateway token, you want to use something that's considerably long, that's going to be used to kind of log in. You really only have to use that a few different times. All the other stuff is stored in a volume called data, and it stores it in the ClaudBot folder or the data workspace, so that all we have to do is come in and set a password, and then we're good to go. Okay, so once you set a password, and once you kind of add in your token, again, I recommend not using the default token that's generated, but kind of create your own that's really long, and you can use Google to kind of help you do that if you'd like. It's going to come and it's going to ask you, are you ready to deploy? And then you're going to click on the deploy button in that case. So it is going to spin up. And what's really great about this is it has a visual layout of your entire architecture. So if you have multiple systems that are connected together, if you have databases, if you have other kinds of servers, you can visually see all of that information directly on the layout, which is phenomenal. So what it's going to do, it's going to ask you for a few bits of information. So it's going to say there's no active deployment at the moment, and then it's going to start deploying. So you can see that it actually went in here. It's going to actually start deploying the most recent version that was on GitHub. So this is actually tied to GitHub for this space. We can go in and we can set up a backup schedule if we want to set up a backup schedule for different times. There's a series of variables that we can look at that by default are the gateway token, the Claude directory, the workspace, and the password that is kind of hidden that's there. We can also track metrics of the specific machine that we're looking at. So it's going to track the CPU, it's going to track the memory. We can look at the network in and out. We can look at requests. There's a lot of good visibility here to understand, is my system up? Is it running? Is it doing things that I need to do? And then the settings page is where we're going to actually be able to change things out in this space. So by default, this is the repo that was actually running and getting configured. And then if I scroll down, I can actually change this to be where I want to, if I have an upstream repo, I changed this in my case to mine because I had a custom version in some of those things. It's going to give us a public network address that we can use with a specific port, which we may have to change depending on the configuration. So we'll look at that. We have an internal IP address if we just need systems to talk to each other between the different architecture in our ecosystem. And then a variety of other settings that are out there that you don't really have to change to do anything right out the gate. But what we're going to do is we're going to wait for this to actually deploy. And this is actually queued at the moment, and it's waiting to be built and be processed in this space. So I'm going to give this a couple minutes to let it spin up this system, and then we'll come back and look at how do we get access to exactly what we're looking at. So things are deployed now, so we can zoom in and we can see I had a deployment that's kind of running and active in this space. But there is one thing that we need to change. By default in settings, if you scroll down and look at the actual network, by default, the port is set to 3000. The way that this template works is it expects a port 8080. So if you go in here and go to change, you can go down and change this port to 8080 to kind of get that to work. Once that's up and running, you can go back to your deployments and you can actually go to your active account that's in this space. And so if I click on this, it's going to open up and it's going to ask me for a username and password. Now, in this configuration, we don't have a username, but we do have a password. So I'm going to pause real quick. I'm going to type in my password and hit sign in and show you exactly where we're at. So once you sign in with that password, it's going to give you access to the setup page. This is the default page that's going to show up, and it's your address / setup. This is only going to show up the first time that you configure this, but you do want to remember that kind of link, because if anything goes wrong with your OpenClaw, this is where you can come back to actually fix it. So in this space, what they've done is they've set up a variety of different things that are available. So they have the actual kind of gateway that's there. We can click on OpenClaw UI, which will take us to the dashboard, but after we configure it, we can also download a backup of all of our files, which is great if you're wanting to move to another instance or put this on another computer, or if you have a version that you've configured for your students or for someone else, you can re-upload that entire backup and it will import it in and give you a starting point for your agents. This is great if you're spinning up multiple versions of an agent that you've already trained. Below that, we have the debug console. So this is going to give us access to a variety of different commands that are the default commands that you would typically run in the terminal when you're working with OpenClaw. We're going to use a few of these today when we're actually configuring our system. You're going to see the actual config editor, which we can use in this space if we need to actually write the JSON for the config. Sometimes you can copy that from the actual configuration from the OpenAI docs. We don't have to do that here. And then you're going to scroll down and you're going to pick your model auth provider. And so this is important to pick the right brain for your system. And we can have multiple providers in this space as well. So you have options for OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, OpenRouter, Vercel, Moonshot, and a variety of others. And you can also customize this to add your own. If there's not one in here, you can kind of add in using the source code that's out there to get your provider to work. Now, I do know that OpenAI and Codex works phenomenal on this environment. Anthropic with Claude Code also works great in this environment, but Anthropic has recently started banning accounts that are using OpenClaw on their plan. So I personally am not using Claude Code as my main brain in this environment because I use it heavily in my day-to-day. I don't want that account to get banned at the moment until they figure things out. So what I'm going to use is Minimax M2.5. This one still says .1, but the new .2.5 account came out. So I'm going to select Minimax. And real quickly, I'm just going to kind of show you, if you go to Minimax, this is what I have my students using. So the Minimax 2.5 as well as Kimi 2.5 both dropped about 2 days after the last Anthropic and OpenAI release came out as well. And what they do is they have a variety of plans that are available, but I'm actually using this starter plan. So this starter plan is $10 a month, and it gives you access to 100 prompts every 5 hours. I've found that for most of my students and a lot of the work that I'm doing, 100 prompts every 5 hours is actually quite a bit. And I've never really hit the limit on this like I have with Claude. Now, that being said, I'm using Minimax as my main brain, but I'm having it actually run Codex from ChatGPT or run Claude Code as actual system kind of services inside of them as well. So this one is really just to manage my heartbeat, manage my recurring tasks, and help orchestrate the actual chatbot system that I'm using. So you can sign up for this plan. It will give you an API key that you can use that we will then bring over and put inside of our OpenClaw setup. So I'm going to go grab my token. Then I'm going to paste that in here, and then we'll go down and actually finish configuring some of the other sessions that are available. So ideally, you would take whatever your key is and you would paste it here directly in the key token area that you're using. This is going to be protected. Is it encrypted inside of this space as you're kind of working on it? So you don't have to worry about that. But in this recording, it's going to show my key. So I'm not going to show that just yet. The next thing that you can set up are different channels for how you can actually interact with your OpenClaw. The default and easiest one to use is a Telegram bot. So you can install Telegram on your phone, on your laptop, on your computer, and you can talk to it as if you are text messaging someone individually. So the documentation has how to set that up, and I'll do a separate video on setting up these different channels. You can also connect it to Discord or Slack very easily. I personally have been playing around with using Discord more because I can have a channel or a server on Discord with multiple channels inside of it, each with different reasons for why I might want to chat with the bot. So I may want to use it for class content. I may want to use it for a personal side business. Every channel inside of Discord is basically a different chat thread that gives me different context windows for what I'm working with. With Telegram, I'm talking to one general bot, and I'm allowing it to kind of filter all that information together. I actually have all of these set up on my personal bot so I can interact with it with a variety of different ways. But I have found that both Telegram and Discord are the best methods at the moment for interacting with this using the template. In addition to that, you can also set up some custom OpenAI stuff. So if you have a local model, you can set things up here using Olama. I will be testing that out as well with some local models, and that's where a lot of people are moving at the moment, is running Kimi K2 or Minimax 2.5 on their own machine, so they're not burning a lot of tokens. But for now, we're going to stick with the Minimax model. You can use OpenAI, use Claude, variety of other ones as we're going. So once you post in your API token, the next thing you're going to do is go down here to the bottom and you're going to click Run Setup. This is going to run the configuration for OpenClaw, configure everything, and let us move on to the next step. Once that finishes running, you're going to be able to come back and see that it's actually running. And this is actually stuff you would get in the console if you were running this directly in a terminal to actually configure this. But if it ran successfully, you should see OpenClaw starting at the bottom, give you some kind of information about what skills you have acquired, what plugins are loaded, and then say it's ready to go. Now, doesn't mean it's ready to go right out the gate. We actually have to set it up and verify that our system is allowed to connect to the actual interface. So if you scroll back up to the top and click on Open OpenClaw, it's going to open up your main session. And it's going to be your main dashboard for how you're interacting with OpenClaw. This is where all of the configuration is done. This is how you can do some initial chats with OpenClaw, and it has all of the information for configuration directly in this environment. But if you'll notice right out the gate, it says that it's disconnected, unauthorized gateway token missing, open the dashboard, and do some things there. So what we need to do is go over here to the left, and we're going to go to Overview. And what we need to do is actually type in our gateway token. This is where we set this up at the beginning. And I told you, make your own long kind of token that's there. If not, you can go back to your Railway deployment, go to your secrets and click on the little I, and it will actually show you what this token actually is that you've created. So you're going to paste in this token. You can see mine's not very long. I'm going to change this when I'm done with it. This is, again, equivalent to a password, so protect this as you're working on it. And then you're going to hit connect. And if that ran successfully, you're still going to see disconnected. But now you can see our error message is a little different. Now it says pairing is required. So how do we do that? To pair our system with this interface, we have to give approval for it to actually connect. So I'm going to go back to the setup page. And I'm going to go over here to the debug console. And in this drop down, what we're going to do is go OpenClaw devices list. And we're going to see here, we're going to click run. And this is basically running a command in the terminal on the system. And it's going to show you, ideally, here is a request of a system that just tried to connect to your system. So I'm going to copy that information. And I'm going to now change it to OpenClaw devices approve. I'm going to paste that information there, and I'm going to click run. And ideally, you should get a confirmation that you are now approved. And if we actually go back to our OpenClaw dashboard now, and I click on connect again, I'm now connected. I now have a connected system, and OpenClaw is up and running in this space. The only way to get access to this system is to log into my address and put in my password, then connect to my control panel, and you still have to know my gateway token. And even then, you still have to get back to the setup page and approve that device. So there's a couple layers of security that are built in so that you're only giving the keys to your castle to people that you actually trust and approve. Now, once I'm connected and I have this set up, I don't have to do this again. There are instances where you might have to reconnect. So if your server restarts, it might restart with a different kind of address. And so you're going to have to go in and reconnect that. So I've had to do that 2 or 3 times when I'm changing or redeploying a system because I've updated under OpenClaw underneath. But for the most part, you don't have to do that. Now, what is the next thing we're going to do to actually get this set up when you're working with OpenClaw? The first thing you have to do is actually talk to it. And what you do when you talk to it the very first time is it's going to wake up and it's going to tell you, I'm a new OpenClaw bot. What do I need to do? Who am I? So if I come down here and I say, hello, and I can't spell today, but it should interpret that. And it's going to give me a list of stuff. It's reading the bootstrap file, which is the first start file for the system. It says you just woke up, time to figure out who you are. And it's going to show that information that's there. It's going to ask you a couple questions that you might be there, and it's going to allow you to just start talking to it. I just came online, fresh workspace, no memories. Who am I? Let's figure it out. Let's get this ready to go. It's at this point that you're going to want to brain dump a bunch of information into your OpenClaw. You're going to tell your OpenClaw, what are you there for? What is your purpose? What do you plan on doing with OpenClaw? Do you make it a personal assistant? Do you want it to be something very specialized? Are you wanting to just play around? You can give it a name. You can give it an identity. There's a variety of files that it's going to start to fill out as you're building this out. Specifically, what you can do to see what files it's going to create is if you go over to the left side and go to the Agents tab, you can go here and you can actually see information about the agents that's there. So you can see various files related to each agent. So each agent is going to have an agents.md file. That's the instructions or rules. These are very similar to the Claude.md file if you use Claude Code. There's a soul file that tells it what is its kind of underlying soul. What is its purpose? What is it trying to do? What is the list of tools that it has access to? What is its identity? What's its name? What's its role? What is your name? What is your role? There's a user file to get information about you. There's a heartbeat file, which runs every so often to keep the agent alive. So this can be set up to run every 5 minutes, every 30 minutes, once a day. You get to control that. There's a bootstrap file, which is what runs the first time that you instantiate an agent. This is where it's going to ask for its name and its role. And then after it's configured, it will have a memory.md file, which is its long-term memory. And there's a bunch of different ways to kind of set up memory. We can talk about that in another video. But ultimately, that's what you're going to be doing in the chat system, is describing this information as you're getting set up. So my recommendation is spin one of these up, get it up and running. Get your chatbot with a name, give it a purpose, ask it some questions, and start building out its underlying rationale before we start connecting it into Telegram, connecting it into Discord, or more importantly, giving it access to your core files. You want to make sure you feel comfortable in this space first.